evening, everyone. All right, let's see how I get to do with the clicker now. There we go. Yes, my name's Matt Hoelscher. I am an accredited coach. I'm not just a self-proclaimed coach. I actually have credentials behind my name. And I love studying emotional intelligence and how it relates to people in all of their lives. How it relates in their work lives, their personal lives, their married lives, and even what kind of parents they are and how they grow. And this has just been a passionate topic of mine ever since I started to become a coach. Because the moment I went to coaching school, I also started reading books. It's crazy things. Zig Ziglar, one of the first books I read, said that less than 1% of people read 500 books in their lifetime after college. And so I said, hey, that's not so hard. I was in sales. I had a lot of windshield time. I started getting audiobooks from the library for free. And before I know it, I was doing easily a book a month and well on my way to reading 500 books in less than 7 years. And that simple fact changed my life because instead of going to a college education where they're trying to tell you what you need to know, I just surfed from book to book to book. And every book that recommended the same book, or I kept running into that same book over and over again in other books, I read that book. And it just became this fascinating wealth of knowledge that I was able to fill myself up with. As Melly said, I moved down here to Florida in 1999, met my wife 3 months later, and I had a passion for scuba diving. All I wanted to do was go scuba diving, because you can't do that in South Dakota. But here in Florida, this is beautiful water, 80 degrees almost year-round, and I loved it. And we fell in love, and then that happens. You go from lobstering under the sea to living in the pineapple under the sea, SpongeBob. With those little kids, Nathan and Everett. They're 8 now. And it's been a wonderful adventure having twins and learning how to parent those. It's like I have my own laboratory in my home to experiment on. So if any of you want a copy of this presentation, I've already got it loaded up in MailChimp. If you text Life Coach to 64600, you can get a copy of it right now and follow along if you don't like the written notes. The presentation itself, though, I have to warn you, it is a complete Playboy presentation. It's all pictures, very little text. If you laugh at the jokes, I'll tell more. If you don't, I will just give you facts and figures. But that was, okay, thank you. A little warm up there. So tonight we're actually going to talk about 3 different things. First, we're going to talk about your brain in love. And Virginia did a great job setting that up with her talk about dating and romance. We're going to recover and expand on some of that. And then because I'm talking about alternative marriage types, I got to talk about the history of marriage a little bit, just to set it up so you understand why it's alternative, why it's different, and why it's a new way to move forward, something you might want to look at implementing right now, instead of just going with what you think is normal or what those assumptions are that we all have in our head. We're going to answer a couple of questions. By the end of the night, you'll know what the worldwide average length of marriage is. You'll understand what the 5 biggest stressors are facing marriage. You'll understand, this is one of my favorite ones, what demographic of people have the longest marriages on average? You start letting that one simmer. What demographic of people have the happiest, longest lasting marriages on average? And then what is the secret to happiness in marriage? I actually have an answer to that. We can debate, we'll take questions at the end, but I do have an answer for how to be happy in marriage. So first we're going to start talking about your brain in love. Because, the fascinating thing about science is that there's this little tiny bit of data and there's this infinite amount of conjecture that gets based off that data. And relationships and marriage is a great example of that. We don't have a lot of data. There isn't a lot of science, but there's a whole lot of conjecture, a whole lot of research. We're going to blow some of that up tonight. There are 2 people that were sort of the foundation of a lot of that conjecture. And this is the first guy. Everybody recognize this guy? Yeah. Charles Darwin. Yeah, he was looking at genomes and reproduction and what's going on there. And he's looking at birds, but all that got extrapolated to human beings and monogamous marriages. It's a little bit of a stretch, but he was really good when he said, it's about being adaptive to change. And that's a good theme for me tonight because I'm going to give you a couple of alternatives that you might want to consider changing into or changing your thinking about. So what got Darwin kind of off there is we always think that marriage and sex is only for procreation because what the majority of the animal kingdom only has sex 12 times for every one baby. It really is just for reproduction. Except for the people who are the closest to us. Anybody know what kind of monkey that is? Bonobo. Oh, we do have some nerd nighters here. Okay, it's gonna get on. It's gonna get real. Where's Pitbull when we need him, right? Yeah. Do you know what's cool about being a monkey, especially being a female monkey, is that you can only conceive a baby 1 month out of the year. But you get to have sex the rest of the year, guilt-free, worry-free, no babies. It's just for pleasure. All this crazy talk that we have about sexual, whether this is normal or abnormal, if you look at the bonobos, they do it all. Same sex, single, alone, having babies, parenting, it's all there. There's only one sexual abnormality that's not observed in nature. Anybody know what that is?
Monogamy.
No, not monogamy. There's like this very few people that manage to do that, more or less with just a little cheating. No, not monogamy. Anybody else? Anybody else? Celibacy. And Mother Nature doesn't want anybody not doing it, because then how are we going to reproduce, right? That is abnormal. Everything else, normal. All right. So we're going to talk about a little bit of sex tonight, and I love the scene with Seinfeld from George Costanza, because every man dreams of having the ultimate sex, right? Being able to eat and have sex at the same time. Any other guys here pull this one off? Nobody's going to raise their hand? Yeah, it's a stretch goal, right? But we as humans think we're so much better than the monkeys, right? We know what we're doing. Does every man here think they're better than the monkeys? Better than a bonobo? There's one man brave enough to say he's better than a bonobo. Yeah, but did you pull this off? Can you have sex, eat, and take care of the kids all at the same time? Yeah. I can't do that. The kids that are the picture, and whoo, I lose all my focus and control right there. So these monkeys have a lot to teach us, because they got some mad skills, let me tell you. All right, the other guy that had a really big influence was Freud. And he came up with a lot of important theories for psychology that weren't tested to any kind of scientific rigor, but he did lead us in the right direction. But again, some of his most important work got stretched way out beyond the realms of anything that's actually accurate, measurable, or repeatable. So while he did some good work, there's a lot of myth that came, and it just sort of came from this Freud guy, because sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. So now we have a new great researcher, Helen Fisher, at what?
Rutgers.
Yeah, Rutgers. And we have this really cool new tool called a functional MRI. We can stimulate your brain with photos. We can see what part of your brain is responding and start actually doing some scientific measurement about where love is in the brain. Anybody know where love is in the brain? Yeah, Helen Fisher didn't know either, so she went on a quest to find it. And I have bad news, she didn't find it. But what she did find is just as valuable, because even when you go looking for something, even when you don't find it, often you find something that's just as valuable or more valuable. And what she found was desire, romance, and attachment all have 3 separate areas of the brain, and they have their own chemical cocktails associated with them. And that first one, desire, comes from testosterone and estrogen. It's what moves us forward. It makes us want things. It's why we get up in the morning and go to work. And then that leads to romance. That's that happy, feel-good feeling where you think of all the women in the room. Look at all the women here in the room. There's a lot of choices. And you look at someone and go, oh, I'm attracted to that. It's okay. I don't think so. But then romance is, guess what? You can't talk to all the women in this room tonight. Eventually you're going to have to filter yourself down and try to make a connection with 1 or 2 of them to see if there's a real connection there or not. And that's romance. It's the filtering of all your desires down to something that's more manageable. And if that goes really well, then you build that attachment. You build trust, you get the commitment, and it all starts to come together. So that first one, desire, that's the one that's really hot, but really fast. It doesn't maintain. It only lasts 0 to 6 months. It can't be maintained. And that becomes one of the myths of marriage, that you think you're going to desire your partner for a lifetime. Not going to happen. And it's okay. It's okay. But the romance is, that one stretches out a little bit more. That one can go from 6 months to 2 years. It's the different chemical. It's the dopamine and the serotonin. And that's where a lot of the new psychiatric drugs come in. They're prohibiting the uptake of serotonin, so you feel more of it unnaturally through the use of the drug. But you will get this normally if you're out there connecting with new and interesting people. Just that touching, having that availability also makes these chemicals, these feel-good chemicals, available to you in your brain. And then finally you get to attachment, where you're just like, oh, you're the one. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Everything is perfect. But even attachment only lasts biologically up to 4 years. And that's when our offspring, from 0 to 4 years old, our offspring can start to fend for themselves, and they're a lot more independent at 4 years old than they are before that point. So it is biological. Once the kids are 4, it's not so important to have that bond that created that offspring in the first place. But what's amazing is that those 3 chemicals, when they all come together, we get what we call new relationship energy. It's that crush that you had in high school. It's that feeling of, whoa, I'm sailing, where everything's perfect. Everyone here had this feeling? Yeah. You're in it right now. Okay, we got a new relationship where it's like, yeah, everything's perfect. Good for you, Lisa. Yeah, everything's great. The wedding industry really takes advantage of you because of this. And it's like, ooh, let's spend $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 wedding. I want pictures and flowers and to tell everyone we're in love. And this love is going to last forever. Right? Yeah, everyone here, a lot of people here have been married. And you know that feeling. And you know now, like I didn't enjoy my own wedding. My wife and I joke about this. But every other wedding I go to now, I enjoy it like it's my own. It's more fun. I don't have to entertain people. I don't have to pay the bill. And I get to drink all I want. It's wonderful. Just enjoy everybody else's wedding. So with these 3 components, lust, desire, romance, and attachment, they are all functioning independently all the time in your brain. They never stop. They don't recognize a piece of paper called marriage. They don't recognize a wedding ring. They are always working. And that's why it feels like the same forces that bring you together and you find that one and we're in love. Until you have what we call the 7-year itch, where it's like, okay, we're not in love anymore. What do we do? I'm not happy. Not part of the program. Nobody tells me marriage is work, and I think I just found the work part. Now what work do I do? And it gets really hard. And if you want to go back, if anybody's familiar with the 7 types of Greek love, if you go back and read those 7 definitions, you'll see that they're all variations of these 3 components and where they overlap. But what a lot of married people don't understand is just because you're married, you're still going to feel desire towards other people. You're still going to connect with other people, even though it may be romantically. It can be a business partnership, it can be a hobby, it can be a mutual interest that brings you together. Because these chemicals are always working. Women don't understand why a man can see a woman in yoga pants at the grocery store and be like, nice. And then it's gone, and it's gone, and it's okay. And you're still attached to your partner, and you still love and care for your wife, and you care for your kids, but you're still noticing these things. And it's okay. It's a natural part of your brain. So then the real damage comes in when we have this myth of the one. If I can just find that one person who will complete me, who will make me happy, who we can go on this journey for the rest of our life together. It's a lot of pressure for something that does not exist. I'll take the round for that. All right. It does not exist. There is nobody in this room that can make another person happy for the rest of their life.
Reach up!
Please let that go. The only person who can make you happy for the rest of your life is you. Exactly. Now the next best thing is to find somebody that supports you in that quest and will help you be the best you that you can be. And in return, if you can do that for another person, that creates a beautiful partnership. But that's not what we define as marriage. So that's why we got to get rid of the myth of the one. You will have connections with people all your life. Even if you choose someone to marry, you have to understand that you will still be connecting with people. You haven't met all the wonderful people that you're going to meet in your entire lifetime. And you're never going to stop meeting people unless you're going to lock yourself away in a cave. So when you understand this brain chemistry, it changes how you look at your relationship, because a lot of this stuff is normal and it can flow through your relationship if you form your relationship, if you have the communication skills, verbal and nonverbal, shout out there in Virginia, to go through it. I wish I could just stand up here and not just say 7% of my speech. The end. Wouldn't that be great? Okay, we need a little more verbal. Okay, so then, you find that soulmate, you find that person that completes you, and you get married, and they all live happily ever after, right? The end! Oh. I mean, this is where the myth of the one leads you, right? You have kids. You did what you're supposed to do. Why am I so unhappy? Look at poor Snow White, and that's the most beautiful Snow White I've seen in a long time. And Prince Charming is, man, the guy doesn't even have a flat screen. It feels hard for that brother. It's rough. Tights are ripped. What happened? Right? The chemicals all left. The party is over. And this is also perfectly natural. It's called hedonic adaptation. Whatever trips your trigger will not trip your trigger for the rest of your life. The more you trip your trigger, the less it's able to be tripped. You get used to it. It's not exciting anymore. I mean, look at, these are two beautiful people. Ladies, would you be happy with a guy that looks like that? Guys, would you be happy with a woman that looks like that? Well, they've been together. They know each other. It doesn't work for them anymore. And this is perfectly natural. Who here is driving the same car, the first car they ever purchased? Same car. Yeah, nobody is. Who's wearing the same clothes? Anybody have like an original piece of clothes that still fits? Yeah, more than 7 years? Maybe a few, yeah, a pair of shoes, okay, But we get used to it. It's not special anymore. And this is also perfectly natural. This is part of desire. This is what keeps us moving forward and adventuring and discovering and living. Because if it didn't, we'd just sit there and we'd be done. And we're not done. All right, so the worldwide average length of marriage is, if you throw out a number, let's play back. 7, the 7-year itch. No, wrong. 4. We have a winner. Ding, 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 ding. You're paying attention to the attachment slide. I already gave you the answer. 4 years. Yeah. Because in a lot of the world, marriage isn't the big deal that it is here. They don't have, remember, we're rich. We have houses. We have cars. We have kids and schooling and college education and 401ks. So the chemicals all wear off, but we will live in misery for a long time before we finally say, that's enough, I'm done. That's why it's the 7-year itch. It just takes a little longer. You got to live in the deadness longer. So let's talk about the history of marriage. How many of you, any history buffs in here? Yeah, a few? All right. History of marriage. Well, the first thing you always have to overcome is biblical marriage, right? Anybody seen this slide on Facebook? The Bible has some pretty scary definitions of marriage. You have to prove your virginity. You can have a husband can have concubines, but a wife can't. You can go and kill another woman's husband and take her as your war bride, and she's yours. If you have slaves, you as the master can bless their marriage or prevent it, or just keep the slaves for yourself, or a man can have multiple females. You won't see in the Bible a female having multiple males. And even in Genesis, you have to prove your virginity. That's the little fine print that a lot of them leave out when they talk about traditional marriage or Adam and Eve. You know, what the Bible says about marriage is some scary stuff that I think is pretty outdated, and I'm not endorsing any of that. I don't think it's a good standard to follow. If it works for you, God bless. That's what it says. You know, and what got edited out of the Bible is even worse. If you read a lot of the Gnostic texts, they talk about Jesus getting married to Mary Magdalene, the prostitute, and having a baby. Any Dan Brown fans here? He made some pretty good stories about that. It's a pretty good wild goose chase. So whether it's true or not, we don't know. But it's some different stuff that's like, ooh, this really changes the whole story. And the story did change. Because there were only 2 sacraments in Christianity. I'm going to pick on the Catholics here tonight a little bit. For 1,500 years. Do you know what those 2 sacraments were? Eucharist and... They pour water on your head. Baptism. Yeah, those are the only 2. They were very anti-marriage. That's why priests still can't get married. Okay, oh good. So they were very anti. It was only till the Council of Trent at 1545 that all of a sudden marriage became a sacrament. The church got into the marriage business. They stopped converting people wholly by just converting the lord of the land, and now the whole Roman Empire is Christian. And they got into the marriage business. So they were against it before they were for it. It was the first political flip-flop. Oh, my jokes are getting worse. Okay, so let's get past the Catholics. There, we'll see if this one sounds... Oh, it does sound better. Okay. But now when we talk about traditional marriage, you know, let's just do a quick timeline with the history here and what that meant. You know, it was for whites only. Blacks with permission. You know, up to the 1769, women were property. And it used to be that you could have multiple wives until we said you couldn't. It wasn't until the 60s where a wife could have property. You know, the 50s. In fact, in 2 days, it's the 50th anniversary of contraception being legal. Today is the 100-year anniversary, I believe, of women having the right to vote. You know, just 100 years that's happened. 1975, the year I was born, women could have credit. All the women now have credit cards? Yeah, good for business. That was a pretty good idea. You know, so, you know, what we consider traditional has really been expanding, and it can continue to expand. Because marriage used to be about controlling production of labor. You're on the farm, we need more laborers for free, and the women are really good at making those. So we needed more of them, and we needed to control who was going to inherit the land. It was all property-based. And it used to be that you married for financial reasons, and if you fell in love on the side, well, that was kind of okay, and just keep it on the down low. If you were a farmer, you were too busy farming anyway, and you didn't have any energy for any of that stuff. It was only a privilege of the upper class. But now as we sort of skip ahead, when you ask people what normal marriage is like, it's usually some picture from the 1950s with the man working and the woman being happy and 2 kids and a white picket fence. And this becomes this kind of nebulous normal that's out there that we're comparing ourselves against instead of setting an intention of what you want your marriage to be. What do you want your relationship to be? What's important to you? How are you going to define it? What do you want to accomplish? Because right now our definition of a successful marriage is time. Oh, we've been married 25 years. If you've been married for 50 years, you get a letter from your congressman. Ooh, congratulations. If you're miserable, nobody cares. Doesn't ask you if you're happy. It's just, how long was it? Did you make it past that 7-year itch? So, you have no responsibility to live up to anybody else's expectations. You know, that's their mistake. It's not your failing. You have the freedom to set your own intentions. And you need to do that in every moment of your life. When Virginia was talking about communication and nonverbal and should I be this or should I be that, the answer is, what's your intention? What do you want to accomplish? And that becomes the anchor that answers all the rest of those questions. All right, who here believes in monogamy? All right, not a single hand. Good. Because there probably aren't many people here who have had one partner for a lifetime. One partner for a lifetime? I saw a hand go up. Yeah, hand went back down. Have you experienced it? Okay, we'll let you off on that one. Most people are what Dan Savage calls monogamish, which means one partner at a time. Sometimes. I'm going to get rid of this one so it doesn't really count. I'm just, getting ready for the next one. Yeah. So, before you look at some of these alternatives that I want to run through with you, let's talk about some of the stressors of marriage. We can do a little family feud. Anyone know what the number one stressor of marriage is? Or what are some stresses? Children, money, sex, in-laws. That was high on my list. I married great in-laws. I love my mother-in-law almost as much as my wife. Aww. Yeah, the top two. I haven't heard the top two yet. Anything else? Career? Infidelity, we put that under sex. All right, number one. Physical or emotional trauma. When I got engaged to my wife, my favorite question was, what was the biggest challenge you had to overcome in your marriage? Some couple got stuck to me on a plane. We could talk the whole flight about this. And I was on a plane with this cute older couple. You know that older couple where they dote on each other and they still have the love in their eyes and they hold each other's hand and you're like, I want to be like that when I'm their age. That's so cute. And I asked them, what was the biggest challenge they had to overcome in their marriage? They had 7 children. I'm like, pretty impressive. Now they only have 6 children because one of their children threw herself in front of a subway train in New York City and committed suicide. And when they told me that and how that almost tore their marriage apart, I understood that there are bad things that happen that we have no control over. And it's about how resilient and how adaptable to change are you, is your marriage, and is your partner. So the number one threat is actually not the things that we think it is, it's what we don't know what's going to happen. It's the unexpected. When you're in that puppy dog stage of love, you don't see anything bad happening. But bad things do happen that you have no control over. Partners get sick, cancer. There's all kinds of things that you're going to have to overcome that you don't expect together. Number 2, unhappy partner. We all change every 7 years. You're not the same person you were when you were 7 years ago. Every 7 to 10 years, you change. Your partner changes. And it's those changes that become the greatest obstacle to overcome. If you've had, say, gastric bypass surgery and you lose 100 pounds, you have an 80% chance of divorce within 2 years. Because you are a new person. And that's a drastic, outwardly change that changes everything in your life. So you have to look out for that because, again, there's always something that's going to change or happen. It can be either something that happens to you or something that changes inside of you. Maybe you're not the same person. Maybe you have some new beliefs. Maybe there's some new feelings that you've repressed and you just realize, I don't want to repress this anymore. Now we'll come back to the ones that we're talking about. Then the parenting comes in. Yeah, if you're not ready to be a parent, kids are more of a challenge than marriage. Being happily married is one thing. Being happily married with kids, especially young kids, a whole nother ball game. And being able to get through that. Money, having that security and that safety. And then finally, good old sex, having sex, because no man here is quite like that bonobo monkey being able to do the threesome. Get it? Yeah, a little pun there. All right, so yeah, you got to be good. You got to be able to connect. That's that physical, nonverbal communication, remaining open and available and exploring yourself, being comfortable with yourself, having your partner comfortable with themselves, and then coming together and really having these wonderful experiences. Because if you don't get this right, this should scare the crap out of you. Anybody know what their IPO is going for AshleyMadison.com? $1 billion. Anyone know the number one day, the most times married women sign up on AshleyMadison.com? Can you name that holiday? Mother's Day! Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, we just missed it. Sorry, guys. Yeah, 36 hours to an affair. AshleyMadison.com is a website that markets itself for cheaters. For people who want to have an affair without being caught and it's mutually understood that the men and the women there are happily married, they want to have an affair, it's just sex. So they get online and they start matching up with people at 8 a.m. They start texting and having chat conversations around noon, and then they make an appointment to have lunch or coffee that afternoon. They meet, and then if things go well, usually by the next night, they schedule a rendezvous. So one of the efficiencies and the power of technology is that now within 36 hours you can connect with another person. So if sex is your number one concern and you want to experience that and not tell your significant other, it's just that easy. It's a $1 billion industry. And these are the people actively seeking it because they don't know it. You know, it happens with all the other people that people can connect to if they choose to want to pursue it. So now we're going to talk about some alternatives to marriage so that we can satisfy our desire, so that we can feel good about ourselves, and so that we can build ourselves and become happy, successful people for ourselves and become great partners for our marriages. And this information comes from a great book that was recently released called The New I Do. She's got like 7 or 8. I originally put them in here and I'm like, wait, I've got 8 alternatives to marriage, but the title's 5, so I gotta cut 3 of them out. So I'm not covering the whole book, I'm just covering the best stuff. Don't worry. So, some of these alternatives. The first one we're going to talk about is the starter marriage. How to practice marriage and get good at it and see what your weaknesses are and what the weaknesses of your partner are. And then we'll talk about a parent marriage, how to focus your marriage just around raising the children as the number one priority. Then I'll go through what we call living apart together, or a long-distance marriage. The safety marriage, that focuses on money, primarily. And then finally, the one that you all came here for, but I won't ask you to raise your hands, the open marriage. How do we have marriage and lots of sex on the side and make that work without messing everything up? Woo! Yeah, party! We'll save that one for last. Okay, so the important thing about a starter marriage, anybody here have a starter marriage? Practice marriage? Say less than 5 years? No kids? 17, okay, that was a lot of practice. You are ready and you deserve it, Lisa. Yeah. Yeah, so the starter marriage is really getting clear on what you want in your marriage on some really key ideas. And the great thing about this is if you're already married, go back through this list and talk to your partner about it. Because these are like, if you're going to make a contract, if you're going to go into business, you wouldn't start a business with another person without having a business contract, would you? Without understanding what their expectations are, what are your expectations, who's going to handle what, and how is that going to work. So the starter marriage is being able to practice that because we're all wounded. We all have some emotional stuff going on up here, and we don't know if we're going to be compatible for the long term. So practice it. Set a marriage that's going to expire within 2 years with the option to renew. It's just like making a contract. Take out the pressure of forever and worrying about finding the one, and like, let's just see if this works. What's the purpose of our marriage? Why are we together? What makes us special? You know, when I married my wife, we went scuba diving every weekend. We worked hard, we played hard, and that was our purpose. And we were so happy for the first 3 years together because we were in sync. You got to talk about finances. Who's paying what? Who's paying for the household? How are the credit cards going to be handled? Is it all in one pot or is it separated? The household. Who's responsible for the chores? You know, a lot of people like, okay, I'm responsible for the stuff inside the house. You're responsible for the stuff outside of the house. You know, lay that out so that you know if it's your responsibility or if you're asking for a favor for some help on something that really you should be doing. It's not like you can't share the work, but it's knowing who's responsible for what. Now with a starter marriage, the one caveat is no children. They make things complicated. If you know anybody that's had a divorce without kids, you can practically do it yourself. Yes. But once you have kids, things get complicated. So if you want to try this, no kids, but you need to figure out what's the contraception plan to make sure we don't have kids because we're not blessed like those bonobo monkeys with 1 month a year. Sex! Anybody talk about their sexual expectations with their partner before they got married? Yeah, we don't talk about it. And then we wonder why we're not happy about it. These are the things that need to come out now to find out if you're compatible versus trying to pretend to be something that's perfect so that hopefully we won't get rejected too soon. It's better to know these things up front, so it's okay to talk about it. You're getting married. And your careers. Where do you want to go? Somebody going to go get additional education and need some support? Are you both going to work? Are you going to work in different towns? Could you be transferred and have to go living apart sometime? You know, these things all come up and need to be thought about so they're not surprises. And the last one, even though it's not kids, you know, pets. I've had a client where they share a visitation of their dog. Yeah, it's really sweet. They care about the dog that much. And I think that's wonderful, but pets are very important. So these are all the characteristics of a starter marriage. They're all the characteristics of marriage. If you're going to make a marriage contract, this is what you cover. This is what's in a prenuptial agreement. You know, these get a really bad rap, but if you go through this and begin, like Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind, that you're not going to be together forever. You go through these things, and then you have a much better chance of being together forever, if that's really your goal, because you're all on the same page. The nice thing about the starter marriage is that just because you say you're only going to do this for 2 to 5 years, it doesn't mean that you cannot renew the contract. Hey, that worked. I really enjoyed this. Let's keep doing it. Okay, we want to make some changes. What's the number one change most people want to make in the starter marriage? Make more money. Yeah. Well, if everything's going well, you evolve in what they call a companionate marriage. You found a good match. You support each other. You're in alignment. You'll be happy. Just be companions. But the next one that comes along is usually the, okay, let's have kids. Yay! Yay! Yay, kids! Never. Okay, I love my kids. I will admit that I was not 100% on board, and I got the whole like, oh, I probably can't have kids. Let's just try. Bam! Twins. First month. Woo! At first I thought it was me, like, man, my sperm just shot right in there. And then it was like, oh no, she dropped 2 eggs. She gets all the credit. Just give the wife the credit. But yeah, do you want to have kids? Because if you want to have kids, choosing a good co-parent becomes so much more important than some of those other things. And there are a lot of people getting married later in life because they want to have kids, and guess what? They're really happy because they both want to have kids. They have that as the central purpose of their marriage. So when you go into a parent marriage, again, it's purpose-driven. It's not the emotional high of love. Ooh, karaoke later. All right, you find that purpose. You understand that you're making an 18-year commitment. Just like anybody here adopt a dog or a cat from the shelter, you know that's a 10 or 15-year commitment, right? Well, kids are an 18-year commitment. You can drop them off the curb at college, but you are responsible until they're 18. But if you look at it as just an 18-year commitment, it's not so scary as, is this going to be the one to last a lifetime? You know, put a time frame on it, and it's not so scary. And then you're going to see your choices change a little bit. Yeah, that person might be great at sex, but are they going to be a great parent? And what's really your priority? What's more important? Do I really want a hot guy that goes out to the clubs and drives the coolest car with that 2-door sports car? Yeah, try getting a baby in and out of a 2-door sports car. Yeah, or it's like, hey, I rock my Honda Odyssey. It's like a Porsche with a thyroid condition. Good, you like that one? I'm testing that joke out. I need to make a little meme. It's not a Honda Odyssey, it's a Porsche. Yeah, choose a good co-parent. And then guess what? Sexual needs can become optional, not obligatory. Because I'll tell you what, having kids will change your sexual desire. You're changing your hormones, and some people it shoots up and it skyrockets, and other people it plummets, and they don't want anything to do with it for like 4 or 5 years. And again, it's normal. But maybe not for the other person who's like, yeah. I'll do it for 2 Scooby snacks. You know, what will it take? And I'm not generalizing between men and women because it affects both of them differently. There's a lot of men that don't enjoy having sex. Yeah, really? You just don't see them because they're not out here at the bar hitting on the ladies. Those are the guys who like to have sex. So, you know, the guys who don't want it are the ones at home watching TV. Boring. You know, but if you've chosen that as a marriage partner, it's tough. So, sex, we're just going to put this down as optional, and we'll cover that later when we get to open. But when you have this all in alignment and you want this all together, you can have a very stable home life. And you can be happy because as long as you're focusing on the kids, everything else makes the decision-making easier because you have that purpose. And some say there's no infidelity. It's a little optional there, but, you know, if you have that commitment, it greatly reduces this as being a problem in your marriage if you're worried about it, if you're concerned about it. Alright, so that's where, if you want to have kids, if you're at that sort of millennial level, here it comes. Alright, living apart together. This is where you have to live and you're not with your primary person. People do this when their careers, their hobbies, or their visions become really important to them. And it can be okay. It keeps things really hot, really passionate, because again, you're living your purpose. You keep your career as a priority. And then you don't focus on the trivial behaviors of leaving the toilet seat up because you don't live together. Sex can actually be more passionate because you know, like, you got this weekend and that's it. When you live with a person, it's like, tomorrow. You know that you have that limitation. In space, you know, you can get claustrophobic when you're together all the time. You can really open it up. So, you have that freedom if you're going to live apart. Now with the safety marriage here, obviously it's all about the money. And I did try to get one gigolo on the screen just to show you that, you know, women are making more money now too. So in the safety marriage, you're sharing the financial goal. You have fewer arguments over money because hopefully the person has it. And then you can be flexible whether you want to change careers, go back to school, become an entrepreneur. And there's a clear division of labor. Again, you're getting really clear on what the expectations are. Okay, so now, fun fact, what demographic of people have the longest marriages on average? Anybody? Guesses? Asian? No. God, Walter, if our friends would die if they knew we were swingers. Yeah, the people who talk about sex openly and have the freedom to pursue their sexual desires have the longest, happiest marriages. So it's the sex that will mess it up or set it free. So it's really important to get on the same page with this. So when we talk about open marriages, there's really kind of 3 different categories. There are the swingers, there's open, and then there's this new thing we call polyamorous. And they're all varying definitions. Everybody really makes it their own. Nobody follows a certain pattern. But swingers are happily married people that give each other a hall pass to have sex with other people. And it's usually very casual. There aren't emotional connections. And they have a good time, whether they go to clubs, or they go to private parties, or they find other couples that they just swap partners with, where it's even, balanced, and everyone has a good time. Then there's the open people who want to do different things. Maybe a partner is bisexual and they want to explore their sexuality. They want to get into kink, if you were here for the BDSM lecture last month. Or they just want something different. So we just call that open, where again, they're not cheating because they're in full agreement with their partner over what's going on. And then finally, the most complicated people are the polyamorous people, where they're having full emotional relationships with other people all at the same time. Complicated schedules, varying complications, as he's with her but she's not with him, who's being with who. But it's a chance of having like multiple full loving relationships simultaneously. There are people who do this. So with the oath, you have marriage and you have sex with other people. It is a possibility. The brain craves what's known and novelty. It wants both. You can satisfy partners with different leveling sex drives. It's much more passionate because sex is out in the open. You can explore different types of sexuality, get into kink, and there's this one other amazing side effect. Some people come back and return to monogamy, and it's stronger because now they know that this is what they want. It wasn't forced on them. So now that we've covered these 5 alternatives to traditional marriage, don't think of these are just patterns to start with. Again, everyone makes it their own. If you want to have a parent marriage that's open, you can do that. If you want to have a living apart marriage that people are still monogamous together, you can do that. The important thing to remember, and that Freud got right, is that repressed emotions, repressed desires do not die. They're there. They don't go away until you communicate them, until you feel them. And marriage isn't about the present. It's not about the wrapping paper on the outside. It's about what's on the inside and what you open up and how you communicate and how intimate you are with your partner. So what's the secret to a happy marriage? Compersion. Anybody know what this word means? Good, because it's a made-up word. It might get in the dictionary someday. It comes from the polyamorous people, and what it means is sort of the opposite of jealousy. When you care about someone so much that their pleasure becomes your pleasure, even when you're not connected to it, you still feel happy about it. Or another way of saying it, when someone else's happiness is your happiness, that's love. All right, ladies, do you understand? Guys? Yeah? All right, well, I have one more for the guys. This guy scored! This guy passed him the ball. This guy gets all the glory. This guy is happy for him. That's compersion. You know, somebody else gets the glory, but you're still happy because you're on the same team. So the thing I want you to walk away with is that you are love. Your brain is full of chemicals. You experience desire, romance, and attachment, but love is in your heart. You are love, and you share that with another person, and you're constantly developing that as a person. And if you keep yourself as the goal, and then set an intention for your partnership, you'll find the happiness that might be eluding you in your relationships or in your marriages. Because the situation has changed, and now we need to change to adapt to it. So if anybody would like to get out of their box in 27 minutes or less, I can help you figure out, is it you or is it your relationship? It's just that simple. I'll be hanging out after the presentation. So if there's one green leaf, we can save your relationship. We just have to find what that purpose and intention is so that we can live happily ever after. Are we going to do questions, or is it wrap up?
We can do Q&A.
Got the...
Hello? We can do Q&A if there's questions.
No?
Hi. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about you said that there's like a 4 to 5 year limit. Can you talk a little bit more about that? I was a little confused. Like you start off the starter marriage saying, hey, we are only going to stay together for 4 years. Like how does that work?
Well, the way it works is that you're beginning with the end in mind, with the expectation that in 5 years, 2 years, you're going to renegotiate the contract. You're not getting married with a default assumption that it's going to be a lifetime and then feel like a failure if you want to get out after 3 years. The point is at any time you can renegotiate your contract, change any part of it, renew it, expand it, change it, or end it. And it's okay. Like you learn. Had a starter marriage and it was successful because you went 3 years, which is enough time to really get to know somebody and know if you want that or not. And then decide if you want to make a bigger commitment. Like, hey, these 3 years were great. My wife and I said, let's have kids. Okay, let's have kids. Whew, that's an 18-year commitment times 2. I'm in. You know, but as a parent marriage, I'm going to take care of these kids so that they have a great start. When they go to college, I'm free again. You know, do we want to go into a companionate marriage, or are we done with each other, mission accomplished, let's part ways and move on with our life because we changed. And if you raised a healthy kid, if you're good at co-parenting, you know, mission accomplished. You've done a good thing. So instead of just the default being forever, and if you don't make it forever, you're a failure, it's set a goal and see if you can accomplish that goal and then expand it or change it.
Any other questions?
Oh, wait, don't put my hands in my pocket.
Okay, now if you go into marriage with that mindset that it's set to expire after a certain amount of time, aren't you also setting a self-fulfilling prophecy where you're saying that at the first sign of hardship, you're out? Instead of saying, okay, well, we're in here for the long term, I'm going to stick this out and maybe learn some of life's best lessons with that person.
And that's a good question. Are you setting a self-fulfilling prophecy? What I have observed and what 43% of people are doing now is that they're just cohabitating. I'm not going to make that long-time commitment, but we're just going to live together and live our lives together and share a space. And the magic of that is every day you're waking up with the commitment to be in that relationship because you can leave at any time. You have that freedom. You have that card. You don't have to call a lawyer and get divorced. So as long as you're choosing to be in that marriage, you're happy, you're sharing what's wrong, you're working on it, things are moving forward. It's when it's forever that it starts to feel like, oh, I can't get out of this, I don't want to argue with her, I'm just going to watch TV and disconnect and withdraw, and I'm going to stop sharing my hopes and dreams because she's not going to follow me or believe in me or want me to do that, and it's threatening. And then you're shutting down versus opening up and expanding. And again, you have that option to renew it. You can keep renewing the contract. It's not like it's over with. One of my favorite questions when people don't know if they should get divorced or not is I ask them, if your marriage was a contract and it was going to expire tomorrow, what would you do? Would you change a certain clause? Would you renew the contract? Or would you let it expire? And when one client who couldn't get divorced said, I would just let it expire and walk away. What does that tell you? I need to call the divorce lawyer. Okay, you know, there's the answer. And she's much happier now.
We have Mike.
Got one in the way back. Shout it out now.